I have a half-baked Stars and Stones theory that I need to run past y'all. And by half-baked, I mean I probably shouldn't even be making this video until I finish my reread of Battleground. Tate wanted pets. Somebody said that I'm paying attention to my phone and not to him, even though he's still getting pets. So one thing I've noticed in the Dresden Files is that there's one part in Battleground where Mavra and the Black Court end up conquering two of the wardens that are with Harry. And when he's like, dude, what the hell? Mavra is like, we have to get blood for the Stars and Stones. And that made me think of other parts in the series where we've seen a lot of blood coming into contact with a lot of stones, and how those stones tend to be rocks that mean something. Like a diamond ring, but actually valuable. Probably the biggest example of this is the stone table that the fairy courts turn over to each other. You know, the one that summer has for half the year and winter has for the other half of the year. And it's the one in Summer Night where Harry took out Aurora after she'd been infected and tried to take down both of the courts. You know, the one where Lloyd Slate earned himself a spot on the world's worst performance improvement plan from his job as Winter Knight. So Aurora and Lloyd Slate met their fate on that table. Another table that ended up taking a lot of blood was the altar at Chichen Itza. This had several sacrifices on it before we got to the main climax of Susan, who was the youngest vampire, getting taken out by Harry in order to take out the Red Court. The power that was taken in from those rituals on the table did take out the entire court, but it's also a very ancient stone that's been used in the Red Court's shenanigans for millennia at this point. We also know that the fairy table that I mentioned earlier has a lot of power and has been used for stuff. See these terrible explanations? This is why it's half-baked. We also have the graveyard that Mavra took the wardens on, and we also have Harry's gravestone. I want to also say that Harry's gravestone could be another one of these like powerful stones, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Tell me in the comments. And finally, probably the biggest stone is the outer gates. I'm not sure if they're made out of stone. I'm going to assume that they are because that would just fit. But there's been a lot of fighting and a lot of bloodshed going on the fight to keep the outsiders out. And so I assume that, or I'm going to theorize at least, that maybe all the carnage there has been powering up the gates to make sure that they end up, you know, staying up and not being breached. And now that I'm thinking about it, doesn't Rashid have an eye that's made of stone that he uses to scan folks coming back from the outer gates to make sure that they're not infected? Could that be another piece of the aforementioned stones that are super powerful and are going to end up in the big apocalyptic trilogy? This is one of those things that sounded a lot more earth-shattering in my head than it did when I tried to start and make a video. My question to y'all is, do you think that these stones have anything to do with the Stars and Stones, or is this just a coincidence that these big, powerful vessels that end up taking blood and power from things and doing like crazy magic shit just happen to be made out of stone? Tell me in the comments below.